The alarm rang through the bridge of the used Valiant, and Commander Jake Morrison jumped from his chair. Red lights flashed across every screen. His heart pounded as he ran to the communications station where Lieutenant Amy Cooper was already working frantically. "What do we have?" Jake asked, his voice steady despite the chaos. Amy's fingers flew across her console. Her face was pale. "Distress signal from Epsilon Prime. The colony is under attack." "Krell swarm, sir. Thousands of them." Jake felt his blood turn cold. Epsilon Prime was home to 50,000 humans, families, children, people who had left Earth to build a new life among the stars. He grabbed the armrest of his chair and shouted orders to his crew. "Helm, set course for Epsilon Prime, maximum speed. Weapons, I want every gun ready the moment we arrive. Communications, send word to the Council fleet. They promised to protect us. Tell them we need help now." The Valiant lurched as the engines pushed to their limits. Space twisted around them as they entered faster-than-light travel. Jake stood rigid, watching the countdown timer. 30 minutes until they reached the colony. 30 minutes that felt like 30 hours. Amy turned to him with worry in her eyes. "Sir, the Council fleet is responding. Fleet Commander Zelfin says they cannot assist. Their ships are engaged in another sector." Jake slammed his fist on the armrest. "Another sector? They have 12 fleets in this region. We paid for their protection. That was the deal." But there was no time to argue. The Valiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and the sight before them made Jake's stomach drop. Epsilon Prime was burning. Dozens of Krell ships swarmed around the colony like insects around a dying animal. Buildings collapsed under plasma fire. Escape pods scattered in every direction, many exploding before they could reach safety. "All weapons, fire at will," Jake commanded. "Target those ships attacking the civilian areas first." The Valiant's guns roared to life. Missiles streaked through space, finding their marks. 3 Krell ships exploded in bright flashes. But there were so many more. The Valiant was alone, one ship against an entire swarm. Jake's crew fought with everything they had. They destroyed ship after ship, but the Krell kept coming. After 2 hours of brutal combat, the Krell finally retreated, leaving behind nothing but destruction. Jake ordered rescue operations to begin immediately. The scene on Epsilon Prime was worse than anything Jake had seen in his 20 years of service. Bodies lay in the streets. Buildings were reduced to rubble. Medical teams worked desperately to save the wounded. The final count was devastating. 8,000 dead, 12,000 injured, and massive parts of the colony destroyed. Jake stood in the ruins of the main plaza, covered in dust and blood from helping pull survivors from collapsed buildings. He opened a communication channel to the Council headquarters. "Fleet Commander." Zelfin's reptilian face appeared on his screen. The Sorks looked bored. "Commander Morrison, I see you survived the attack. Where were you?" Jake demanded. "You promised protection. We paid you. We gave you everything you asked for, and when we needed you, you abandoned us." Zelfin's eyes narrowed. "Human colonies fall under secondary protection protocols. Primary threats take precedence. Perhaps if your species contributed more to the Council's defense budget, you would receive better service." Jake felt rage building inside him, but he kept his voice level. "We have contributed more than any species relative to our size. We have sent our soldiers to your wars. We have given you our resources. We have done everything asked of us. And you have been granted the privilege of Council membership," Zelfin replied coldly. "Be grateful for what you have, Commander. Many species would envy your position." The screen went dark. Jake stood there in the ruins, surrounded by the bodies of his people, and realized the terrible truth. Earth had been played for fools. The Council never saw humans as equals. They saw them as tools to be used and discarded. Back on Earth, President Helen Briggs sat in her office in Geneva, reading the reports from Epsilon Prime. Her advisors stood around her. General Paul Hendricks, a veteran soldier with gray hair and hard eyes, and Admiral Lisa Green, the brilliant strategist who commanded Earth's small fleet. "This is the 3rd colony attacked in 2 years, Helen said quietly. "And each time the Council conveniently has other priorities. This is not coincidence. This is policy." General Hendricks nodded. We have been reviewing the Covenant of Ascension that we signed 30 years ago. The terms are worse than we thought. We agreed to provide military forces for Council operations. We agreed to sell our resources at fixed prices well below market value. We agreed to surrender territorial claims in exchange for protection that, as we now see, does not exist. Admiral Lisa Green pulled up a holographic display showing human space. Red markers indicated colonies. Blue markers showed Earth's military assets. It was a pathetically small network compared to the vast territories controlled by other Council species. We dismantled most of our independent military when we joined the Council, Lisa explained. They told us it was necessary for integration. They told us we would be safe under their protection. Now we are vulnerable, and they know it. Helen looked at both of them. What are our options? We could file a formal complaint with the Council, Paul suggested, but his tone made it clear he did not believe it would help. Or we could begin rebuilding our military capabilities, quietly. Helen was silent for a long moment. She thought about the images from Epsilon Prime, the children who would never grow up, the families torn apart. The trust that had been betrayed. She made her decision. Activate Project Crimson, she said. I want our best scientists working on independent military technology. No Council oversight. No Council knowledge. We have been playing by their rules for 30 years, and it has gotten our people killed. That ends now. Lisa and Paul exchanged glances. They had both hoped she would make this choice, but they also knew what it meant. Earth was about to start down a dangerous path, one that could lead to conflict with the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. There is one more thing, Helen continued. I am promoting Dr. Nathan Cross to lead Project Crimson. He is young, but his work on quantum mechanics is revolutionary. If anyone can give us an edge against Council technology, it is him. As her advisors left to carry out her orders, Helen stood alone in her office, looking out at the night sky. Somewhere up there, her people were suffering, abandoned by those who promised to protect them. But that would change. Humanity would become strong. And when they were ready, they would take back everything that was stolen from them. The stars looked cold and distant, but Helen knew that one day soon, they would burn red with the fire of human determination. The Council had taken from humanity for 3 decades. Soon, very soon, humanity would collect what was owed. 5 years had passed since the massacre at Epsilon Prime, and Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of a ship that should not exist. The UES Retribution was humanity's secret, built in hidden shipyards beyond the edge of charted space. She was beautiful and deadly, unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Captain Morrison, Amy Cooper called from her station. She had been promoted along with him and remained his most trusted officer. All systems show green. The quantum displacement drive is ready for testing. Jake nodded and gave the order. Engage. The stars stretched and twisted. Space itself seemed to fold around them. Then, in an instant, they had traveled 50 light-years. The journey that would have taken a Council ship 3 hours had taken them 15 minutes. Jake allowed himself a small smile. Dr. Nathan Cross and his team had done the impossible. Run full diagnostics, Jake ordered. I want to know how every system performed. While his crew worked, Jake walked through the corridors of his new ship. The Retribution was not the only secret humanity had been building. In hidden facilities across human space, 49 other warships were under construction. Weapons that could punch through Council shields were being manufactured. Soldiers were being trained in tactics that the Council had never seen before. Earth had learned patience. For 5 years, they continued to send tribute to the Council. They continued to send soldiers to fight Council wars. They smiled and bowed and played the part of grateful junior members. But beneath the surface, humanity was preparing for something the galaxy had never witnessed. On the colony world of New Terra, Captain Kate Sullivan reviewed the latest shipment requests from the Council. She was the governor of humanity's most productive agricultural colony, and she was tired. The people of New Terra worked from dawn until dusk, growing food that fed not just humans but half a dozen Council species. They are demanding another 20% increase in grain shipments, her assistant told her. And they are reducing the payment by 15%. They say it is necessary to support the Galactic war effort. Kate felt anger rise in her chest. The Galactic war has nothing to do with us. Why should our people starve to feed their soldiers? But she knew why. Because humanity had no power to refuse. Because the Council knew Earth would comply rather than risk losing their protection, worthless as it had proved to be. Kate sent a coded message to Admiral Lisa Green on Earth, adding new Terra's grievances to the growing list of injustices that humanity was documenting. Far away on the Council homeworld of Sanctum Prime, Ambassador Richard Hayes sat in the Grand Chamber where the Council met. He was preparing to address them, knowing his words would likely change nothing but required to try nonetheless. The chamber was massive, with representatives from 12 species seated in a great circle. At the center sat High Chancellor Morvex of the Galactic Federation, his blue skin gleaming under the lights. He regarded Richard with barely concealed contempt. "The human ambassador wishes to speak," Morvex announced. "We shall hear his complaints, as is required by protocol." Richard stood and projected a holographic display showing charts and data. "Honorable Council members, I come before you to discuss the unfair burden placed upon humanity. Over the past 30 years, humans have contributed 23% of the Council's military forces despite representing only 4% of the population. We have provided resources at rates far below market value. We have surrendered territorial claims while other species expand their holdings." He paused, letting the data sink in. Meanwhile, human colonies have been attacked 17 times. In each instance, Council protection forces were unavailable. We have upheld every aspect of the Covenant of Ascension, but the Council has failed to provide the protection promised in return. Morvex did not even look at the data. "Ambassador Hayes, humanity's complaints are noted. However, your species volunteered for Council membership. You accepted the terms offered. If you find them unsatisfactory, perhaps humanity was not ready for the privileges of galactic civilization." "Privileges?" Richard's voice rose despite his training. "We have paid for membership with blood and treasure. We ask only for fair treatment." "And you receive treatment appropriate to your power and position," Morvex replied coldly. "The strong prosper in the galaxy, Ambassador. The weak serve. That is the natural order. If humanity wishes better terms, become strong enough to demand them. Until then, do not waste the Council's time with grievances." The other Council members said nothing. Some looked uncomfortable, but none spoke in humanity's defense. Richard gathered his papers and left the chamber, humiliation burning in his chest. But he also felt something else: determination. He sent an encrypted message to President Helen Briggs with a single sentence: "They will never listen to words alone." The message from Sanctum Prime was broadcast across human space within hours. The Council's own news services, always eager to demonstrate the power of the strong over the weak, showed footage of Morvex dismissing humanity's complaints. They showed him saying that the weak exist to serve the strong. It was meant to humiliate humanity, to keep them in their place. Instead, it united them. On Earth, President Helen Briggs watched the broadcast with General Paul Hendricks and Admiral Lisa Green. They had been expecting this moment. They had been preparing for it. "The people are angry," Paul reported. "Every colony, every station, every ship. They have all seen the broadcast. They want to know what we are going to do about it." Helen turned to Lisa. "Are we ready?" Lisa pulled up a secure holographic display. It showed the locations of 50 advanced human warships hidden across space. It showed weapon stockpiles on every human colony. It showed militia forces trained and ready to deploy. It showed 5 years of careful, secret preparation. "We have 50 capital ships with technology superior to anything the Council possesses," Lisa explained. "We have quantum displacement drives that make us faster than any Council vessel. We have rail cannons that can penetrate their shields. We have trained 300,000 soldiers in advanced combat tactics. And we have this." She highlighted a network of small dots spread throughout Council space. "Quantum mines. We have been deploying them for 3 years, hidden and inactive. When activated, they can disrupt Council fleet movements and create defensive barriers around human territory. Helen looked at the display for a long time. She thought about every human who had died because the Council broke its promises. She thought about every family that went hungry because the Council took their food. She thought about 30 years of humiliation and exploitation. How long until we can begin operations? She asked. 30 days, Lisa replied. We need that time to position our forces and ensure every colony is prepared. Helen nodded slowly. Then in 30 days we remind the galaxy that debts must be paid. We show them that humanity is no longer weak. And we take back everything they stole from us. She turned to both of her advisors. Contact Jake Morrison. Tell him to prepare for Operation Crimson Dawn. Humanity has been patient long enough. In the hidden shipyard where the Retribution was docked, Jake received the message. He gathered his senior officers and told them what was coming. He saw fear in some eyes, but also determination. They had all lost friends and family to Council negligence. They had all watched humanity be humiliated for years. In 1 month, we stop asking for justice, Jake told them. We start taking it. The Council thinks we are weak. They think we will accept whatever they give us. They are about to learn how wrong they are. As the meeting ended and his officers returned to their duties, Jake stood alone on the bridge of the Retribution. He looked out at the stars and thought about what was coming. War, death, destruction, but also justice, dignity, and freedom. The countdown had begun. In 30 days, the galaxy would see humanity as they truly were, not as the weak species that begged for scraps, but as warriors who would burn the stars themselves to collect what was owed. The mining station Helios 7 hung in orbit around a massive gas giant, its metal structure gleaming against the swirling orange clouds below. It was one of the Council's most important facilities, extracting helium-3 fuel that powered their warships. 20 Council vessels guarded it, confident in their superiority. They had no reason to expect an attack from humanity, a species they considered weak and powerless. That confidence was about to cost them everything. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Retribution, surrounded by his crew. 4 other human warships waited nearby, invisible to Council sensors. They had traveled here using quantum displacement, arriving without the energy signatures that traditional faster-than-light travel created. The Council fleet had no idea they were here. All ships report ready, Captain, Amy Cooper announced from her station. We are in position. Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment everything changed. Once they fired the first shot, there would be no going back. Earth would be at war with the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. But he thought about Epsilon Prime. He thought about every human who died because the Council abandoned them. He thought about the humiliation his people endured for 30 years. Execute Operation Crimson Dawn, he ordered. All ships engage. Space twisted as 5 human warships dropped out of quantum displacement directly above the Council fleet. For a moment, the Council ships did not react. They could not believe what they were seeing. Then alarms started screaming across every Council vessel. The Retribution's rail cannons fired first. Solid projectiles accelerated to a fraction of light speed tore through the shields of a Council destroyer like they were made of paper. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash. Before the Council could respond, the other human ships opened fire. It was a massacre. Council ships tried to raise shields and return fire, but human weapons were too fast, too powerful. Their plasma cannons, designed to penetrate modern shields, burned through Council armor. Within 5 minutes, 15 Council ships were destroyed or disabled. The remaining 5 tried to flee. Don't let them escape, Jake commanded. If even one ship gets away, they will warn the rest of the Council. The human ships pursued with their superior speed. One by one, the fleeing Council vessels were hunted down and destroyed. The entire battle lasted less than 10 minutes. 20 Council warships eliminated without a single human casualty. Scan for survivors, Jake ordered. Then target the mining station. Broadcast our terms on all frequencies. Amy opened a channel to Helios 7, attention mining station personnel. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Retribution. Lower your shields and surrender immediately. You will not be harmed. We are here to liberate you, not to kill you." There was a long pause. Then a voice responded, weak and uncertain. "This is Station Director Kovacs. Are you truly from Earth? Are you here to free us?" "We are," Jake confirmed. "Surrender now and you will be protected." The station's shields dropped. Jake led a boarding team across in armored shuttles. What they found inside made him sick with rage. The station was staffed by slaves, beings from a dozen species forced to work in brutal conditions. Many were thin and weak, their bodies broken by years of hard labor. Medical care was minimal. Food was scarce. The overseers, members of the Valix species, had lived in luxury while those they controlled suffered. Jake found a section of the station where humans were held. His own people, sold into labor contracts by corrupt officials to pay council fees. Some had been here for years. When they saw Jake's uniform, tears ran down their faces. "We are taking you home," Jake told them. "All of you. This ends today." He ordered his soldiers to secure the facility and provide medical care to everyone who needed it. Then he recorded a message, standing in the center of the station's main hall, surrounded by the freed workers. "My name is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Retribution. Today, humanity has struck the first blow in our war for justice. We have destroyed a council fleet and liberated this station. But this is only the beginning." He gestured to the people around him. "For 30 years, Earth signed agreements with the Galactic Council in good faith. We believed we were joining a civilization of laws and mutual respect. Instead, we found exploitation. We found betrayal. We found that the Council sees us not as equals but as resources to be used and discarded." His voice grew harder. "We asked for fair treatment. We were dismissed. We begged for protection. We were abandoned. We pleaded for justice. We were mocked. So now we take what is owed to us. We are formally withdrawing from the Covenant of Ascension. We reject Council authority over human space. And we declare that any Council forces threatening human lives or territory will be met with overwhelming force." He looked directly into the camera. "You took from us for 30 years. Now we collect what is owed. This is not a war of conquest. This is a war of liberation. Every being held in slavery by the Council will be freed. Every injustice will be answered. Every debt will be paid." The message was broadcast across every Council frequency. Within hours, it reached every corner of the galaxy. The reactions were immediate and explosive. On Sanctum Prime, High Chancellor Morvex smashed his desk in rage as he watched the message. He called an emergency session of the Council and demanded immediate military action. The representatives of the Sorix, still furious about the destruction of their ships, pledged 3 battle fleets. The Valix, humiliated by the liberation of Helios 7, committed their largest armada. Other Council species, seeing an opportunity to demonstrate their loyalty, promised ships and resources. Within a day, orders went out across Council space. A massive fleet of over 300 warships would assemble and crush the human rebellion. Earth would be taught a lesson that would echo through the galaxy for centuries. No one defied the Council and lived, but while the Council organized its response, humanity was already moving. Admiral Lisa Green coordinated a brilliant series of simultaneous strikes across 12 systems. Human forces, using quantum displacement to achieve complete surprise, attacked supply depots, freed more slave labor camps, and destroyed Council outposts. Captain Kate Sullivan led the attack on a Council supply hub in the Zeta sector, capturing millions of tons of resources that had been extracted from human colonies. She broadcast her own message, listing every unfair trade agreement, every broken promise, every Council betrayal. In every operation, human forces demonstrated their superior technology and tactics. Council commanders, accustomed to fighting less advanced enemies, found themselves unable to track or counter human movements. The human ships were too fast, their weapons too powerful, Their coordination too precise. On Earth, President Helen Briggs addressed her people in a historic broadcast. She stood before the combined assembly of humanity, representatives from every colony and station watching via hologram. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice calm but firm. "Today marks the end of our humiliation and the beginning of our liberation. For 30 years we have been exploited by those who promised to protect us. We gave them our resources, our labor, and our lives. In return, they gave us contempt." She pulled up displays showing the evidence, trade agreements that cheated humanity, promises of protection that were never honored. Council species expanding their territory while human claims were rejected. "We did not choose this war lightly," Helen continued. "We tried diplomacy. We tried negotiation. We tried following their rules. But the Council respects only power, so we will show them power. Not for conquest, not for revenge, but for justice." The assembly erupted in approval. Every human world, every station, every ship declared their support. Humanity was united as never before. In his laboratory deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon, Dr. Nathan Cross watched the broadcasts with satisfaction. His quantum minds were deployed and ready. His ships were performing beyond expectations. His weapons were proving devastatingly effective. But he knew the hardest test was still coming. The Council's massive retaliatory fleet was assembling. Soon, hundreds of warships would descend on human space with overwhelming force. Everything depended on whether humanity could withstand that assault. Nathan reviewed his final surprise. The weapon he had not told anyone about yet. It was risky, perhaps too risky. But if the Council fleet proved too strong, humanity would need every advantage. As the first week of the war ended, the galaxy watched in shock as humanity, the species everyone had dismissed as weak, fought the Council to a standstill. Small species that had suffered under Council rule began to whisper among themselves. If humans could resist, perhaps they could too. The Council's fleet continued to gather, growing larger each day. But so did human determination. The stars were burning red with the fire of war, and humanity had no intention of backing down. 2 years after the war ended, the galaxy was a different place. The Council had been restructured from the ground up, transformed from an alliance of the powerful exploiting the weak into something closer to a true republic of equals. The changes were gradual and sometimes painful, but they were real. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Retribution. Now officially recognized as part of the Council Defense Fleet, he watched ships from a dozen species, moving through space nearby, conducting joint training exercises. Human vessels worked alongside Lumina medical ships, Sorix patrol craft, and even some Valix transports. The cooperation would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. Lieutenant Amy Cooper joined him at the window. She had been with him since the beginning, through every battle and every close call. "Strange, isn't it?" she said. "Fighting beside the same species we were trying to kill not long ago." Jake nodded. "Strange but necessary. The galaxy has not become any safer. The Krell swarm is still out there. There are threats none of us can face alone. We just needed to make sure the Council would treat us as partners, not servants." The door opened, and Admiral Lisa Green entered, followed by a small delegation that included Captain Kate Sullivan. Lisa looked tired but satisfied. She had spent the past 2 years rebuilding Earth's military while also working with other species to create the new joint defense structure. "We just received word from the frontier," Lisa announced. "The last of the slave labor camps has been shut down and the workers freed." That was the final one on the list. It was a moment they had all been working toward. Over 24 months, human forces working with Council inspectors had liberated hundreds of facilities where beings were held against their will. Some species had resisted, clinging to old practices, but the new Council laws had real enforcement power now. Justice was no longer just a word. Kate smiled, something she did more often these days. New Terra sent its first shipment of grain under the new fair trade agreements. We are actually making a profit now instead of barely surviving. The colonists can finally build instead of just work themselves to exhaustion. On Earth, Dr. Nathan Cross walked through his facility with a group of scientists from various species. The human advantage in quantum technology had been shared with council members as part of the peace agreements. Some military leaders had objected, arguing that humanity should keep its technological edge. But President Helen Briggs had insisted that real peace required trust, and trust required sharing. "Your quantum displacement drive is remarkable," a Lumina scientist said, examining the schematics. "Our ships have never been able to achieve such speeds." Nathan explained the theory, watching as the other scientists took notes. This was how it should be, he thought. Knowledge shared freely, everyone working together to solve problems and push boundaries. Humanity had proven itself, not through hoarding secrets, but through innovation and courage. In the council chambers on Sanctum Prime, Ambassador Richard Hayes stood to address the assembly. The chamber looked different now. Instead of a great circle with the powerful at the center, the representatives sat in equal positions. Every species had the same vote, the same voice. Earth proposes an expansion of the Mutual Defense Pact to include the independent colonies in the Outer Rim, Richard said. These settlements have been targets for raiders and pirates. If we offer them council protection and membership on fair terms, we strengthen everyone. Representative Solara seconded the motion. The Lumina support this proposal. We have a responsibility to protect those who cannot protect themselves. But unlike before, we will do so as partners, not as rulers demanding tribute. The vote passed unanimously. It was small moments like this that showed how much had changed. The council was slowly becoming what it had always claimed to be, a true alliance for mutual benefit and protection on a small colony at the edge of human space. A teacher named Claire Jackson taught her students about the war. They were young, born after the conflict ended, and they had trouble imagining a time when humanity was considered weak and expendable. Why did the council treat us so badly? One student asked. Claire chose her words carefully. Because they could. Because we let them. Because we were desperate to belong and thought we had to accept whatever they offered. But our leaders learned that being part of something is not worth the price if it costs you your dignity. Did we win because we were stronger? Another student asked. We won because we were smarter and more determined, Claire replied. We had better technology, yes. But more importantly, we had something to fight for. The council forces were fighting to maintain power. We were fighting for survival and justice. That made all the difference. In the Valix home system, Commander Theron, the general who had fired the planet-killer weapon at Haven's Reach, lived in exile. His own people had rejected him, disgusted by what he had done. He spent his days alone, watching the news feeds that showed the new council working together. Sometimes he wondered if things could have been different. If the council had treated humanity fairly from the beginning, would the war have been necessary? But he knew the answer. The council's power had been built on exploitation. Giving that up without being forced would have required wisdom and compassion that the old leadership lacked. Back on the Retribution, Jake received a message from President Helen Briggs. She was stepping down after serving 2 terms and overseeing the transformation of human society from exploited junior members to equal partners in galactic civilization. Her final act was to promote several key officers who had won the war. Jake Morrison was promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's First Fleet. Kate Sullivan became captain of the new flagship, UES Liberty. Amy Cooper was promoted to commander and became Jake's second in command. They had earned their ranks through courage and skill, and now they would help defend the new order they had fought to create. Helen's farewell address was broadcast across human space and beyond. She stood at the same podium where she had declared war 2 years earlier, but her message now was about peace and hope. We went to war because we had to, she said. We fought because the alternative was slow destruction. We won because we refused to accept that might makes right. Today we live in a galaxy where justice matters more than power, where treaties are honored and where every species has a voice. She paused, looking directly into the camera. But we must never forget the lessons of this war. Peace must be maintained through strength. Justice must be defended. And we must always be willing to stand up for what is right, even when the cost is high. The transition to the new president went smoothly. Earth's democratic institutions had survived the war intact, stronger even. The colonies that had worried about being abandoned now had real representation. Every human world had a voice in deciding their future. Jake stood on the bridge of the Retribution one evening, preparing for a patrol of the frontier regions. Amy worked at her station nearby. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, a team that had been through fire together and survived. "Do you think the peace will last?" Amy asked, echoing the same question she had asked 2 years ago when the war began. Jake looked out at the stars, no longer red with the fires of war but bright with possibility. "It will last as long as we are strong enough to defend it. The galaxy respects power, but it also respects those who use power justly. We proved we have both." He thought about all that humanity had achieved. They had gone from being exploited newcomers to respected members of the galactic community. They had taken the worst the Council could throw at them and not just survived, but won. They had changed the nature of galactic civilization itself. "We were owed justice and dignity," Jake continued. "We were owed fair treatment and respect. When it was not given freely, we took it. And now every species in the galaxy knows that humanity keeps its word and collects its debts." The Retribution moved into quantum displacement, heading toward the frontier where new challenges waited. Behind them, Earth and its colonies thrived under the new order. Ahead of them lay a galaxy full of possibilities, dangers, and opportunities. Humanity had earned their place among the stars through courage, innovation, and determination. They had proven that being newest did not mean being weakest. They had shown that justice could be achieved through strength used wisely, and they had taught the galaxy a lesson that would not be forgotten. The strong might rule through fear, but the just rule through respect. Humanity had been underestimated, dismissed, and exploited. But when pushed too far, they had shown the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. They had made the stars burn red with the fires of righteous war, and from those fires a better galaxy had been born, the debt had been paid, justice had been served, and humanity stood ready to face whatever came next, equals among the stars, partners in building a future worth fighting for. They had collected what was owed, and in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever. The Council Armada arrived at Crimson Gate like an approaching storm. 300 warships moved in perfect formation, blotting out the stars. It was the largest fleet the galaxy had seen in a generation, representing the combined military might of the most powerful species in known space. Fleet Marshal Corthan of the Sorix commanded from his massive flagship, confident that this show of force would crush human resistance in hours. Admiral Lisa Green watched them come from her command center hidden in an asteroid field at the edge of the system. Around her, holographic displays showed the positions of every ship, human and council alike. She had positioned her forces carefully over the past weeks, preparing for this exact moment. "All ships report ready," her tactical officer reported. "The mine network is active. They are entering the trap." Lisa allowed herself a thin smile. "Execute Phase 1. As the Council fleet crossed into the Crimson Gate system, space itself seemed to shimmer. Thousands of quantum mines that had been placed over years activated simultaneously. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Council ships suddenly found they could not enter faster than light travel. The mines created spatial distortions that trapped them in normal space. Forced to fight at conventional speeds, Fleet Marshal Corthan watched his displays light up with warnings. "What is happening? Why can we not jump to faster than light?" His officers worked frantically. "Unknown technology, Fleet Marshal. There are thousands of devices throughout the system creating interference. We cannot escape without destroying them first." Corthan felt the first flutter of doubt, but he pushed it aside. "No matter, we still outnumber them 3-1. All ships, advance in formation, find the human fleet and destroy it." The Council Armada moved deeper into the system. Then Jake Morrison struck. The Retribution and 20 human warships appeared from behind a moon, accelerating to speeds the Council ships could not match. Human rail cannons fired in coordinated volleys, targeting the Council formation's outer edge, Council ships exploded before they could return fire. The human vessels moved too fast, attacking and retreating before Council weapons could track them. Jake had trained his fleet for exactly this type of combat, fast strikes against a slower, larger enemy. "Second wave, you are clear to engage," Lisa commanded from her asteroid base. Captain Kate Sullivan led 20 more human ships in an attack from a different angle. Her target was the Council command vessels in the center of their formation. The human plasma cannons, designed specifically to counter Council shields, burned through defensive screens with terrifying efficiency. Fleet Marshal Corthan found himself fighting a battle unlike anything in his experience. The human ships refused to engage in the traditional way, where larger numbers and firepower would win. Instead, they struck from multiple directions, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted effectively. His superior numbers meant nothing when his ships could not coordinate their fire. "All vessels, break formation and pursue independently," Corthan ordered. Growing desperate, it was exactly what Lisa had hoped he would do. The moment the Council formation broke apart, human ships intensified their attacks. Now, instead of facing a coordinated fleet, they fought against scattered groups that could not support each other. The battle raged for 18 hours. Space around Crimson Gate became a graveyard of burning ships. The human forces rotated their vessels in and out of combat, keeping fresh crews in the fight at all times. The Council fleet, unable to withdraw because of the minefield, had no such luxury. Dr. Nathan Cross monitored the battle from his lunar facility, feeding tactical data to the fleet in real time. His quantum communication network allowed human ships to coordinate instantly, while Council forces relied on traditional communication methods that had seconds of delay. Those seconds meant the difference between life and death. Of the battle entered its 20th hour, Lisa saw her moment. The Council fleet was exhausted and disorganized. Fleet Marshal Corthan's flagship sat at the center of what remained of his armada, trying desperately to restore order. "All ships," Lisa broadcast across the quantum network, "execute convergence strike. Target the flagship." Every human vessel in the system turned toward Corthan's massive dreadnought. For a brief moment they held formation, lining up their weapons. Then they fired together. Thousands of rail cannon rounds converged on a single point. The flagship's shields, already weakened by hours of combat, collapsed under the overwhelming barrage. The massive vessel broke apart in a series of explosions that lit up the entire system. Fleet Marshal Corthan died, never knowing that he had been defeated by tactics. His own arrogance prevented him from understanding. With their commander dead and their fleet in ruins, the surviving Council ships attempted to flee. Many were destroyed trying to escape through the minefield. Others surrendered. Of the 300 warships that entered Crimson Gate, fewer than 90 escaped. The news of the devastating defeat spread across the galaxy within hours. On Sanctum Prim, the Council chambers descended into chaos. High Chancellor Morvex faced accusations from every direction. How could humanity, a species they had dismissed as weak, destroy the most powerful fleet the Council had ever assembled? "They had better technology," one representative argued. "We underestimated their capabilities." "They had better tactics," another said. "They fought in ways we never anticipated." But Morvex knew the truth was simpler and more frightening. Humanity was willing to fight with a desperation and determination that comfortable Council species had forgotten. They were fighting for survival, for justice, for everything they held dear. The Council was fighting to maintain power and privilege. That difference made humanity far more dangerous than anyone had realized. Several Council species began questioning whether the war was worth continuing. The Lumina, a peaceful species that had never been comfortable with Council aggression, openly called for peace negotiations. Others quietly withdrew their support, unwilling to sacrifice more ships and lives, but humanity did not stop. President Helen Briggs authorized continued operations while the Council was reeling from their defeat. Over the following weeks, human forces liberated 8 more slave labor camps, capturing massive amounts of resources and weapons. Every freed slave became evidence of Council cruelty. Broadcast across the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison led raids on Council supply lines. cutting off resources to their forward bases. Captain Kate Sullivan established contact with smaller species that had suffered under Council rule, offering them protection and alliance. The message was clear: humanity was not fighting to become the new oppressor, but to create a galaxy where justice mattered more than power. The Krell swarm, watching the Council's weakness, launched new attacks on Council territory. Other hostile forces that had been held in check by Council power now tested their defenses. The Council faced threats on multiple fronts. Their military stretched thin and their confidence shattered. On Earth, Helen met with her advisors to plan the next phase. Admiral Lisa Green reported that human casualties remained remarkably low. Superior technology and tactics meant they were winning battles with minimal losses. General Paul Hendricks reported that every human colony was now fortified and ready to defend itself. The Council is fracturing, Richard Hayes reported from his diplomatic post. There are representatives willing to negotiate peace. They recognize that continuing the war will destroy the Council itself. But Morvex and the hardliners still control the Council military. They refuse to accept defeat. Helen considered the situation carefully. Can we win if they throw everything they have at us? Lisa answered honestly. We can hurt them badly. We might even win. But the cost would be high. If we can negotiate from a position of strength, that would be better for everyone. Then we keep the pressure on, Helen decided. We show them that we cannot be defeated, but we also show them that we are willing to make peace if our terms are met. Justice and equality, nothing less. As the meeting ended, Helen stood alone in her office once more, looking at the stars. The war had turned in humanity's favor, but she knew the hardest choices were still ahead. The Council would either accept peace or fight to the bitter end. Either way, humanity had proven they belonged among the stars, not as servants but as equals. The galaxy would never forget the name of humanity again. They had been underestimated, dismissed, and exploited. Now they had shown the price of such arrogance. The stars burned red with the fires of war, and humanity stood at the center of it all, collecting the debts that were owed. 8 months into the war, the galaxy was changing in ways no one had predicted. The Council that had ruled for centuries was fracturing from within. 3 member species had declared neutrality, refusing to send more ships to die in a war they no longer believed in. But the Valix and Sorix, the 2 most powerful Council members, remained determined to crush humanity no matter the cost. High Chancellor Morvex sat in his private chambers on Sanctum Prime, watching battle reports with growing desperation. Every week brought news of more defeats, more losses, more evidence that humanity could not be beaten through conventional warfare. His advisors urged caution, but Morvex's pride would not allow him to admit defeat. We need something that will break their spirit, he told his inner circle. Something that will show humanity the price of defiance. His military commander, a Valix general named Theron, presented a proposal that made even some of the hardliners uncomfortable. We have planet-killer weapons in our arsenal. Graviton pulse devices that can tear a world apart. If we destroy one human colony, make an example of them, the rest will surrender. That violates every treaty on warfare, one advisor protested. Using such weapons on civilian populations is forbidden. The galaxy will turn against us. Morvex silenced him with a gesture. The galaxy already questions our strength. We must show them that defying the Council leads only to destruction. Choose a target and prepare the weapon. The decision was made in secret, known only to Morvex and his closest supporters. A Valix battle group was dispatched carrying a graviton pulse weapon. Their target was Haven's Reach, a human colony home to 12 million people. It would be a demonstration that would echo through history. Captain Jake Morrison was patrolling 3 systems away when his communications officer picked up unusual readings. A Council battle group was moving toward Haven's Reach, but their energy signatures were wrong. The ships carried something massive, something that drew enormous amounts of power. Get me Dr. Cross, Jake ordered immediately. I need to know what that energy signature means. Nathan Cross analyzed the data in his lunar facility and felt his blood run cold. That is a planet-killer weapon. They are going to destroy Haven's Reach. Jake's mind raced. The retribution was too far away to intercept in time. Even at maximum quantum displacement speed, they would arrive hours too late. 12 million people would die, and there was nothing he could do to stop it unless someone already had. "Nathan, please tell me you have something," Jake said quietly. "Some kind of defense you have been working on." Nathan had hoped he would never need to activate this particular system. It was experimental, risky, and pushed the boundaries of known physics. But he had prepared for this exact scenario, unwilling to leave human colonies defenseless against the Council's most terrible weapons. "Every human colony has a network of defensive satellites I have been placing over the past 2 years," Nathan explained. "They generate a quantum shield that can protect against planet-killer weapons. But the technology is untested at this scale. It might not work. Can you activate it from there?" Jake asked. "Yes, but if I am wrong, if the calculations are off even slightly, the shield could collapse and make the damage worse." Jake understood the weight of that decision, but he also knew there was no choice. "Do it. Save those people." Nathan's fingers flew across his controls, activating systems that had never been used in real conditions. On Haven's Reach, thousands of satellites hidden in orbit powered up simultaneously. The colonists on the surface looked up in wonder as a shimmering barrier appeared in the sky. Like an aurora covering the entire planet, the Valix battle group dropped out of faster-than-light travel above Haven's Reach. Their commander, confident in his orders, activated the graviton pulse weapon without hesitation. The device fired, releasing enough energy to tear apart a planet's core and scatter its pieces across space. The pulse struck the quantum shield and stopped. The entire planet seemed to hold its breath as the two forces met. Energy crackled across the sky. Buildings shook. People screamed and held each other, certain they were about to die, but Nathan's calculations held. The shield absorbed the graviton pulse and dissipated its energy harmlessly into space. Haven's Reach survived. 12 million people lived because a young scientist had dared to push the boundaries of what was possible. Jake arrived an hour later with a human battle group. The Valix ships, shocked that their weapon had failed, tried to flee. None of them made it. Jake destroyed every vessel, ensuring no one could report back what had happened, but the evidence remained. Jake captured detailed recordings of the planet-killer weapon being fired at a civilian target. He broadcast it across every frequency in the galaxy, making sure everyone saw what the Council had attempted. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic for the Council. Even species that had supported the war were horrified. Using planet-killer weapons against civilians violated the most fundamental laws of galactic civilization. It was an act so barbaric that it shocked even hardened military commanders. On Sanctum Prime, Representative Solara of the Lumina species led a formal challenge against High Chancellor Morvex. She was joined by representatives from 6 other species, demanding his immediate removal from power. "You have violated every principle the Council claims to stand for," Solara declared before the Fugly. "You ordered the murder of 12 million civilians. You have brought shame upon us all." Morvex tried to defend his decision, claiming it was necessary to end the war quickly, but his words fell on deaf ears. The moderate faction of the Council, silent for so long, finally had the evidence they needed to act. A vote was called. High Chancellor Morvex was removed from power by a vote of 9-3. He fled Sanctum Prime rather than face prosecution for war crimes, disappearing into the outer regions of space. With him went the hardline faction's control over Council policy. President Helen Briggs recognized the moment for what it was, an opportunity for peace. She authorized Admiral Lisa Green to begin ceasefire negotiations while maintaining military readiness. There would be no letting down of guard, no trust until agreements were signed and honored. Captain Kate Sullivan continued operations, leading raids that captured 3 critical Council supply hubs. Each successful mission gave humanity more leverage at the negotiating table. The message was clear: humanity could continue the war indefinitely if necessary, but preferred peace on fair terms. The negotiations took place aboard a Lumina diplomatic vessel, neutral territory where both sides could meet safely. Ambassador Richard Hayes represented humanity, bringing with him decades of documentation proving council exploitation. Representative Solara led the moderate council faction. Genuinely committed to reform, the terms Richard presented were straightforward. The council must formally apologize for its exploitation of humanity. All unfair trade agreements would be nullified. Human territory would be recognized as sovereign, with Earth having an equal vote in council decisions alongside other species. All enslaved laborers, human and non-human, must be freed immediately. The council must pay reparations equal to the value of resources extracted from humanity over 30 years. Most importantly, the council's charter would be reformed. New laws would ensure no species could be exploited as humanity had been. A judicial system with real power would be established to hear grievances and enforce justice. These terms are harsh, Solara acknowledged, but they are fair. The council has much to atone for. The Valix and Sorix governments, humiliated by their military defeats and facing internal political pressure, reluctantly agreed to the peace terms. They had little choice. Continuing the war would only bring more defeats. And their own populations were tired of fighting. The war officially ended with the signing of the Accords of Haven's Reach, named for the colony that had nearly been destroyed. The document represented a fundamental restructuring of galactic power. Humanity had not just won their freedom, but had changed the nature of the Council itself. Captain Jake Morrison returned to Earth a hero, greeted by millions who celebrated not just victory but survival. He stood with his crew, remembering all those who had died in the war, both human and non-human. The cost had been high, but the alternative had been slow destruction through exploitation. Dr. Nathan Cross received Earth's highest civilian honor for his technological innovations that had made victory possible. But he remained focused on the future, already working on new projects to ensure humanity would never again be vulnerable. Admiral Lisa Green began the complex work of integrating human forces into the reformed Council defense structure. This time, it would be based on mutual respect and shared burden rather than exploitation of the weak by the strong. President Helen Briggs addressed both humanity and the galaxy in a historic broadcast. We fought not for conquest but for justice. We fought not to dominate others but to prevent our own domination. Today marks the beginning of a new era, where power is balanced by law and strength is tempered by wisdom. She acknowledged the thousands who had died on both sides. Let this war be remembered not as humanity's triumph, but as a lesson for all species. Exploitation always creates resistance. Injustice always demands correction. And debts, one way or another, always come due.